We started with a real kind of obviously shock at what was going on. And while I was out there, Croatia then turned into a red list country. And then also think about the fact that every time you spend money, you're effectively voting for either a better world or something else.
This is the Green on the Go podcast, where we talk about keeping travel sustainable. And for this episode, I got to speak to Ben Lynam, Head of Strategic Communication at the Travel Foundation. So, hello Ben, and welcome to Green on the Go. How are you?
Very well, thank you, India. Thanks for having me.
Good. Oh, so good to have you here. So, obviously, I know who you are. We've worked together for a couple of years now, but if you could share a little bit about your background in travel and a little bit about the Travel Foundation that you work for, just to start us off.
Okay, yeah, sure. So I'm Ben Lynam. I'm Head of Communications at the Travel Foundation. For those who don't know much about the Travel Foundation, we are a charity that's based in the UK, but that works in destinations all around the world with tourism businesses, with governments, and with communities to try and make tourism better for the destination, for the environment, and for the communities. And we've been working with Holiday Extras as our supporter and as our partner for many years. I think it's around about a decade, actually.
It's a decade now. Oh, that's awesome. So. And obviously, you know, we started this chat just sort of filling each other in on how we've got through the last year, both working in the travel industry. And it's been a bit of an interesting one for the travel industry. But how has this past year in a pandemic been for the Travel Foundation? You know, what's been your journey over the last year?
Yeah, I mean, it's, as you say, we were talking before about our, personal experiences. And in some respects, I think the organization has mirrored probably what many people have experienced over the last sort of year and a half, and many people in the industry too, the travel industry. I mean, we started with a real kind of obviously shock at what was going on, and trying to understand what that really meant for us as an organization. And we are dependent on travel businesses and customers who buy holidays to donate to us. And obviously all of that stopped near enough overnight. So that was at least one issue for us to get our heads around. But equally, trying to understand what it would mean for the communities that we work in, and what it would mean in terms of how we would be able to still continue to have an impact for that over that time. It's been a funny sort of mix, I would say, because we found that people have been really, really interested in working together and collaborating a lot more. I think maybe in all walks of life right now, people have just been more interested and open to working together. And we've really noticed that, with things like webinars, we've all become so used to things like webinars now. And actually, you can really see the interaction and the level of interest that people are having in kind of coming together to talk about the future now. And also really being much more open to the idea of change, and thinking about how to build back better, which has sort of become a term that was bandied around quite a lot, still is being bandied around quite a lot. But certainly, early on, it seemed to be like, well, at least let's try and, not waste the crisis. There's an opportunity here. And we've just been really keen to make sure that spirit has some teeth now, if you like, that there's actually some detail behind what Build Back Better might actually mean for tourism and for destinations.
Yeah.
So like I say, it's sort of a mixed bag of kind of, fear, opportunity, kind of confusion, hope, all sorts of things. But I feel like we are in a place now where, obviously things are beginning to move back towards something approaching a normal, maybe not the old normal, but a normal. And this is the time where, I think we can really start to make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously when everything started to close and travel started to stop, did you find that the destinations that you were previously supporting suddenly needed your support more? but obviously in a different capacity? Or did you find that you then had sort of more time to start new projects? How did that work?
Yeah, I mean, we basically, a lot of what we were currently doing basically had to stop, near enough stop, because a lot of what we do relies on there being tourism in a country, and therefore, if you know the hotels are shut, if the if the customers aren't there to to maybe buy the things that we're producing with the community or whatever it may be, then the project's not particularly viable anymore. So in that sense, quite a lot, at least initially, stopped, and we were in a case of right now, what really needs to happen right now? What do we need to do? And at that point, we really felt that what we wanted to do was to work with the sort of destination authorities, if you like, to say, right, this is a chance for you now to really think through what you want to get out of tourism in the future, and to start planning for that eventuality in a new way. So, not that we're just going to have a opening up back, maybe even more competitive than you were in the past, trying to desperately get, more and more people to your destination, but to think about why you want those people there, and to start really trying to shape a new kind of tourism within your destination. So that's a lot of, in a sense, that we realized that we have been doing that all along, since we were set up basically, but this gave us a kind of a renewed sense of this is what we need to do now. And we started to kind of approach destinations and offer support and provide them with new training. We started to kind of redo a whole load of materials and trainings that we had already developed previously, but to kind of reset those for a kind of recovery scenario around COVID and that side of things too. So that took a lot of, at least last year, in terms of how we would change things up a bit.
And just out of curiosity, really, was there any destinations that started to see a positive effect from having less tourists? Because I know, obviously, like a destination that we went to visit a couple of years ago with you guys was Cape Verde, and part of the main problem there was more tourists than locals. Tourism had sort of become a little bit overwhelming for them over a space of about 10 years, and the work that you were doing was to trying to bring the balance back. So did you see, sort of, I guess this is a little bit like devil's advocate here, but did you see any positive effects in any destinations from a lack of tourism, or was it more the fact that these places were relying on the money coming from tourism and then suffering?
Okay, so yes, both of those things are true, basically. And I think it's an element of degrees and of balance that's needed here, really. So, I would say most of the people that we are in contact with are obviously people who are within the tourism world and within the tourism industry. And so for those people who are reliant on tourism, for those economies that are reliant on tourism, heavily reliant, it was, I think, pretty devastating from an economic perspective, which obviously also has a social angle to it and a human cost that goes with it. So I think really it would be, we'd need to really kind of acknowledge that massive devastation. We were hearing about, perfectly good businesses, family-run businesses that would just not be able to, not surviving, collapsing, going under, a real kind of exodus from the industry with people, then trying to find jobs elsewhere, and that sort of thing. So I think that shouldn't be underestimated, but of course, there are some positives. I think we certainly heard many stories of environmental benefits of just areas that have just been given a break for a season. I expect people have heard of stories of sort of water quality improvements in Venice, seeing sort of dolphins swimming around and that sort of thing. And those sorts of stories, I think, are there, particularly in destinations that were heavily crowded. And similarly, I think that what everyone had to do was to listen much more to their local residents, and think about actually what their needs are. So obviously domestic tourism became something that was a potential to offset the lack of flying and overseas tourism. And that has meant, I think, that destinations have become much more aware of trying to develop products and services that are going to be good, not just for foreigners coming in, but also for locals too. And also listening to what locals might actually want from tourism themselves, even if they're not part of the business. There's lots of reasons why it might be really nice for you as a citizen of a city or coastal town or wherever, to have visitors come to your hometown. It might be that it gives you a sense of pride, or that you feel like you have a place in the global scene, or it might be that it allows better public transport or a more vibrant cultural scene, or whatever it may be that you can sort of tap into. And I think that as some residents felt that they were able to sort of reacquaint themselves with their hometown and take back some ownership of it, it gave the chance for a new conversation to happen about that. And so, because actually it's like, well, okay, so there aren't any visitors here now, and you might be enjoying that in the short term, but you can also see how businesses are really struggling. And actually, sooner or later, you're going to notice that all sorts of, other services might be failing as well. So it's just been a interesting time to be able to have that conversation with locals and residents to kind of say, so what do we actually want from the visitors that we bring in?
And so is this part of that whole Build Back Better idea that you're now working on? It's like, okay, we've had this time to kind of recoup and work out what we need and what we want, and if we need tourism. Tourism is a industry that every country, should I say, most or majority of countries benefit from. How are we going to do it better? We've been almost given this chance to give it a fresh start. Is that the idea behind it?
I think so. I mean, tourism is pretty unique, I think, if you think about other sectors, other industries, other economic activities. They're not the same as tourism, in the sense that tourism, it brings visitors, it's very visible, but it also it can affect all aspects of your life, really, as a resident. And that can be wonderful for some of the reasons that I've explained before, all those positive benefits that you can potentially get from having people coming to your destination. But equally, that kind of comes with some responsibilities and with some need to be careful and responsible in your approach. And so a lot of what we've been saying around the Build Back Better sort of banner is that really understand what the value is that you see in tourism. So, yes, there's an economic kind of argument here in terms of the money that's brought, the spend that tourists and travelers can have within a destination. But actually, what are those other things that you will value about having visitors there? So, like some of the things that I've said before, the sense of pride, the thriving nightlife, maybe, or whatever it is. And make sure that you are then thinking about how to really bring out those values, and make sure that you get what you want from tourism, and be mindful of those things that you would rather not necessarily see much of a return of, the characteristics that might be, overcrowding, or it might be, services that you can't access because there's too many tourists, say.
Yeah, I know, absolutely. And I guess this links into the guiding principles for tourism's new future campaign, which I know Holiday Extras has signed up to. So could you just tell us a little bit about this, what it's about, why you're getting businesses like Holiday Extras to sign up to it?
Sure. Okay. So in the middle of last year, so when COVID-19 was in full flow, we actually got together with a number of other NGOs from around the world, and formed a Future of Tourism coalition. Between us, we put out 13 guiding principles for the future of tourism. And that basically was our way of trying to make sure that we could corral all of this new interest and goodwill towards wanting to build back better into something a bit more specific, because obviously better can mean many things to many different people. It's a pretty vague word. So we wanted to say, right, okay, well, we think that better means this. And, there are sort of areas around making sure that you have a circular economy, making sure that you involve residents in decision making, make sure that you're focusing on quality over quantity, that everyone has a fair distribution of the wealth that is being provided by tourism, that sort of thing. So all of these things that we think will help a destination to thrive and will put tourism and the future of a destination on a firm footing, we put down into these 13 guiding principles. And since then, we've been encouraging destinations, we've been encouraging businesses, governments, whoever really, academics, etc., media, to sign up to these principles and say, yeah, actually, that's our vision too. And what we're trying to do by doing that is to first of all, signal to the world that this is, a viable future, that and build up a group of people who are sort of fully signed up to that, and allow those organisations also to support each other and to start saying, right, okay, so we haven't got, we don't have all the answers for how we can realise that that future, but together we probably do have all of the answers, if we're honest. And if we can kind of continue that spirit of collaboration which we've seen over the past year, then we think that it's that we should be able to make sure that through our recovery process we end up with a very different looking tourism that's going to be much better for the future.
Yeah, and I think that's really sort of interesting using that word collaboration, because I guess what the pandemic has done is it has united the world in a way, because we've all had this shared experience. Obviously certain places have been worse affected than others, but it has affected everyone. And so it kind of creates this umbrella that we're all under the same umbrella, and we're all in the same boat, and we all need to work together to come back and make this comeback. And I guess having those guidelines, I guess you could say, like you said, build back better can be quite broad term, but if you have those guidelines, and it means that anyone who signs up has to meet them, and it gives you it takes those places that have signed up on a journey together, so everyone's working towards the same thing. Is there any destinations that you think you're really keen to kind of push for tourists to go to now, that need tourism more than ever, obviously, once things open up?
I mean, I would say that if you think mainly about the, where the impacts of the last year have been truly felt, it's been in sort of coastal regions in particular that are really reliant on tourism, and we're hearing lots of quite worrying stories about how communities have their local economies have pretty much collapsed over the last year. So in that sense, I would encourage people to travel back to Mediterranean areas. I mean, strangely enough, I was in Croatia this sort of almost this time last year when things began to open up again. And while I was out there, Croatia then turned into a red list country. But places like Croatia were absolutely beautiful. Got everything that any sort of tourist or traveler could possibly wish for. And it's there really, on our doorstep, essentially, I would say, the sort of the Mediterranean and these European sort of gems. So I would encourage people to think about whether or not they feel like they can go back to those sorts of places initially. Obviously it's uncertain at the moment as to which countries you are or aren't able to visit, but certainly as far as we're concerned, I think if you can go back and visit these countries, then they will be pleased to see you.
Yeah, so you do believe that the places are going to be open, like have arms wide open to tourists. It's not going to be no, go away, we're quite happy by ourselves, thank you very much.
No, I don't think so at all. And that's not been, our experiences, and talking to people, and beginning to, visit some countries again ourselves. So I think that, the welcome will be there. I mean, I would say be mindful of the fact that, obviously certain residents may be more nervous than they might otherwise be around travelers, because obviously they might be thinking about the experiences of the past year and worrying about sort of COVID transmission, that sort of thing. But I know that all the travel businesses have been working really hard to make things safe. So I would just be mindful of not taking for granted the fact that you'll be welcomed with open arms by everyone, but I think you can pretty much expect it, certainly from people within the within the travel trade.
Yeah, absolutely. And are there sort of any, obviously you've got the guiding principles for tourism's new future that businesses and NGOs and all sorts have signed up for. Have you got any sort of guiding principles that tourists can think about and sign up for, almost for when they go and book a trip and travel? Is there any sort of things that they should be thinking about on their next trip in order to be part of this Build Back Better campaign?
Sure. I mean, I always say, first of all, remember to take all of those responsible behaviors that you have at home with you when you go on holiday. So, I'm sure that you will be very good at things like recycling and taking a reusable bottle with you and that sort of thing. So take all of those habits with you when you go abroad, and then be particularly mindful of the destination you're in, because it may be a place where there are some particular sensitivities around the environment. It might be, you mentioned Cape Verde before. They don't have a particularly great access to fresh water, at least. And so be particularly mindful in destinations like that when you're thinking about, using water consumption, shower instead of bath, et cetera, et cetera. And then also think about the fact that every time you spend money, you're effectively voting for either a better world or something else. So if you can think about saying, right, I want to spend locally, and I want to show that I am interested in more sustainable products and that sort of thing, then that will really make a big difference every time you spend, basically. So they would be my main things. The one other thing would be, if you can, stay for longer. I think we should all get into a habit, and maybe it's even easier now if we can work remotely, to stay longer in a destination. That's good because it means you get more from your carbon footprint that you're spending as you go on holiday. It also means that you're more likely to explore more unusual places in your destination, which means that the benefits of tourism can be spread around more. There's lots and lots of good benefits if you can stay longer rather than be a sort of a fleeting tourist. So if that would be another quite nice recommendation, I would have thought for most people.
It's like, you know what, it's better for the planet if I just take a really long holiday.
The Travel Foundation says make it at least a month. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, like this is what it is. And then, so what kind of projects have you guys got coming up on the horizon? Because I know you had all, like, what was it, like John's in Jamaica and all sorts, and have you managed to rekindle those projects, or is it a case of that you guys are starting new projects and new destinations now?
Yeah, so I mean, a bit of both. I mean, certainly, as I mentioned before, we're doing quite a lot at the moment, which is around supporting So destination authorities. So that's like local authorities maybe, or ministries of tourism, people like, governmental bodies, just trying to really support them in their planning around recovery, and to try and realize this new vision for what their destination could be, and how to enhance all the good stuff that they can get from tourism. So that's certainly something that's sort of built up, that is much stronger now than it certainly was 18 months ago. In terms of some of the projects that we're working on, we're continuing to work on some projects that have been going on for many years, but we've had to obviously adapt them quite a lot. So for instance, in Cyprus, we have been working with hotels and restaurants to try and reduce the amount of single-use plastic that they're using. And clearly there's been some quite interesting sort of curveballs that COVID has brought in around single-use plastic, with this sort of this feeling that everyone should now only use things once and then throw them away, because that's somehow better from a health perspective. So we've been sort of re-looking at sort of how we can get messages across to restaurants and hoteliers about that, and to and to bust as many of the myths as we possibly can around that, because it's just it's absolutely fine to reuse cutlery and plates and cups and all these things.
Because I actually got out to Cyprus when I think it was fairly near the start of that project that you were launching, and we got to speak to one of the hotels and see some of the work that they were doing, and it was amazing to see. I think it was in Ayia Napa we were, which is obviously renowned for being party central, cigarette butts and plastic cocktail cups everywhere. And it really looked like a lot of the hoteliers were really on board with this thing, and they had seen Ayia Napa change from a small little fishing town to this party central, and they were so keen to kind of bring some of those original traditional qualities back. But it's like you say, the pandemic and COVID has sadly made us sort of take a few steps back in terms of single-use plastic. So it's about, I guess, almost trying to re-educate ourselves out of that mindset that we've got to be super careful and only use things once. And
it is a shame, and you can understand why people were nervous about it, at least to start with. But I think we're just trying to get to a point now where, like you say, we're educating people, with the science, with the facts, to be able to say, look, actually, yes, some things might need to be, need to change. There might be some new ways of doing things, but actually, the way that you can really show that you're on top of this isn't just by, introducing a whole load of plastic cutlery into the mix. You can, demonstrate that you have all these cleaning stations and all these sorts of things that are going to give the reassurance that you want to give to your customers, whilst also understanding that things like, putting cutlery in a washing machine, on a hot wash is absolutely going to do what it needs to do to make to keep your customers and your staff safe. So it's those sorts of things, and you're absolutely right. I mean, one thing that I would say I have noticed in Cyprus in particular over the last year is the community really coming together. Getting quite cross about suddenly seeing face masks on the beach and that sort of thing. There's a new form of litter which they don't want to see. They're really passionate about their beaches. They're really passionate about sort of the relationship that they have as a community with the sea. And I think that really comes through, and they want to look after it. They want to be a steward of the beautiful areas that they live in. And I think that comes across. So in a sense, again, we've all of that's there, that sort of enthusiasm, that collaboration is there. And I think, if we can just kind of channel that in the right way, particularly as all of those old pressures come back and we start to see, more and more international travelers coming through again, we just need to be able to say, right, okay, so this is the new way, imagine what this could be like now, with a new type of tourism where we're saying, okay, we don't need to, just because we're in tourism, it shouldn't mean that we have to have things in single use. It's a problem for us as an industry that is often seen as the case.
Yeah, no, it completely, and that single use starts from the aeroplane, unfortunately, doesn't it? So it's almost like the moment you get on a plane, it's kind of drilled into you. But there was definitely a want for change. I could see it so clearly when we went to Cyprus. It was probably a couple of years ago now. So you just hope that will come back. So going back to the guiding principles for tourism's new future, just out of curiosity, how many businesses have you got signed up to that?
Well, all in, we have just coming up to around 600 organizations now, most of them businesses, some governments too, like I say, some academics, universities, some media, but the majority are businesses. I mean, we started, we've just actually had our anniversary of the launch. So it's been about a year when we built up to, around about 600 now, and some really, big names, small names, real mix of people there. We've got the WWF involved. We've got World Bank signed up. We have, many other sort of big names as well. Holiday Extras now is another really big name that we're really excited, to have on board. So yeah, I mean, I think between us, we should be able to have a stronger voice. I think we should be able to share a whole load of resources with each other, because I think there's lots and lots of really good examples of businesses doing brilliant things out there. And I think it's probably the case that no business can say they're doing everything right. So if we can kind of begin to share what we know and what we've learned with each other, then I think, we've got a really good chance of really speeding up this process. So it's really exciting. We're there trying to coordinate that and pull together, or essentially a toolkit of stuff for tourism, so that whenever any of these issues we're hit on, like single-use plastic, we need to do something about that, people will know where to go, and they can start to kind of navigate through all of the thorny issues around it.
Yeah, well, that's amazing that you've got 600 already, and you just think that'll just keep growing as well. Is that the plan, and to keep adding more and more?
It is really, yeah. I mean, I think we want to be a big sort of group of people, because we think that size is important. It gives us a louder voice, and it gives us more of an opportunity to influence, and obviously influence from within too, so that if we can encourage change within the businesses and within the destinations that have signed up, then that's really going to have a significant impact, I think, not just on those people who have signed up, but on everyone in those destinations and in the wider tourism industry. So I think, certainly we want, we're encouraging more and more people to sign up, but, equally now it's not just about signing up, it's about making some changes and, starting to put all of this into practice. And that's why we're now, really trying to have much more of a practical focus on what people can do differently.
Yeah, because I guess there is that sense of sort of, well, you don't want to say, but greenwashing, isn't it? When organisations, they say they're doing X, Y, Z, but they've actually got to go through with it. And I guess that's where your drive comes through of pushing these places to do what they say they're going to do.
Exactly, yeah. And this is the time. It's a lot of what we're doing is around the planning that everyone's putting in place right now for recovering for the next 2, 3, 4 years. And that's when some of these changes can be made. It is an opportunity, despite all the difficulties that businesses and destinations are facing right at the moment. This is an opportunity to change things up and to do things a little differently. And we just need to make sure that we're giving the right sort of tools to allow that to happen. Yeah,
definitely. Oh, well, I'm really excited to see where it goes, and to I'm really excited the Holiday Extras are part of it as well. So it's such a good thing to be part of. Well, thanks so much, Ben, for chatting with me today. It's been really good to hear that you guys are kind of back on track, and the future of tourism is a positive one. So thanks so much, and good luck with all your projects coming up.
Thanks, Cynthia.
Thanks a lot.
Had it not been for ecotourism, we would not have mountain gorillas in the wild now. You can be sitting in your living room with a headset on, and you can have a guide taking you on a virtual live tour of a rainforest, of a savanna. You can go on a virtual safari